Hello, everyone, and welcome to our final panel discussion on day number 3 of the Modern Sales Pros July Virtual Summit with the amazingly clickbaity title of The Funnel is Dead. Over the past 2 days, we've covered a variety of concepts all about creating your revenue organization and thinking about your revenue organization customer in as opposed to function out. As Tiffany Bova once said, your customers don't wake up, or your prospects don't wake up in the morning and go, today's the day. I'm going to become a stage 4 opportunity, and now I'm going to get to see the product. We shouldn't approach engaging with our prospects and customers that way either. Our mission at Modern Sales Pros is to create an environment for our community members to answer questions they'd otherwise struggle to solve on their own, and see around corners that they may not know are coming up. And we hope over the past 2 days and then throughout our sessions today that you'll get to see around this corner a little bit and perhaps think about your go-to-market motion just a little bit differently. The past 3 days wouldn't be possible without the sponsorship of a number of great organizations. We're really fortunate to have worked with these groups to pull together an amazing cast of speakers and also do some really fun events. As we dive into our schedule for today, as I mentioned, this is day number 3. We're almost in the final stretch here. This morning, we're going to be talking about aligning marketing, sales, and customer success for SMORE revenue. Really fun topic. This afternoon or early morning, depending on what time zone you're in, we're going to be doing a virtual speed networking session where it's a chance to meet, greet, answer some goofy trivia questions, win some really amazing prizes. And then finally, we'll be bringing it home this afternoon with a conversation about compensation. The focus of all of this is for you. So if you have questions throughout, please do feel free to reach out, use the Q&A panel, anything that you want to know. Take advantage of this time to learn as much as you can from each other and from our panelists and speakers that we have on our sessions. All of this wouldn't be possible without the amazing work of the team behind the scenes. For those of you who attended Tuesday's roundtable discussion, you got a chance to meet some of the folks on the team at MSP. This afternoon, if you attend the virtual speed networking event, you'll get a chance to do that as well. I don't say this lightly, and I don't feel like I'm blowing smoke. I do have the privilege of working with some of the best and the brightest in terms of the team that helps make MSP run. Gina, Hannah, Nora, Taylor, and Elizabeth truly are the engine that create the frameworks that allow us to do what we do here. So please do join us this early afternoon. You get a chance to meet them. But team behind the scenes, again, thank you for all the hard work that you've done. Now, enough from me. I want to give our panelists a chance to introduce themselves. When we think about this topic, alignment is an incredibly important part of having a seamless, friction-free customer journey. This is also something where we've approached it over the last 3 days. We've talked about this from the data perspective. We've talked about what RevOps needs to do to get the data aligned, but now we're going to focus on organizationally. Like, cool, that's nice, Rich. The data's all there, but like, somebody in marketing has got to actually work with somebody in sales. So I'm really excited to introduce this set of panelists. And we're going to be going through over the next hour or so, kind of a deep dive on how to do this, what they've seen, and how it works. So I'm going to kick it over to Sheryl to do a quick introduction. Sheryl, thank you for joining us again, and we're excited to have you here.
Thanks, Richard. I'm excited to be here. Hi, everybody. I'm Sheryl Buscheck. I am currently the head of global enablement at a techie company called InfoBlox. I've been in enablement roughly 8 years. And big companies, small companies, enablement is where I feel like I belong. And if somebody asked me to kind of describe myself on the personal side, I like to describe myself as someone that you might get if you cross a math and engineering nerd with a cheerleader. So that's kind of how I behave day to day. Some people love it, some people hate it, but it's a really good way to be for enablement.
We're excited to have Sheryl here. You're a great speaker as well. So excited to have you back again. Bill, thank you for joining us here. First time panelist, which no pressure, first time paneling.
Great to be here. Thank you, Bill Campbell, Director of Sales Development for the Americas at Elastic, home of Elasticsearch. And a very exciting time at Elastic in hyper growth mode. We've landed on 4 analyst reviews, big ones, just in the last year, less than a year's time. So I've been in sales and marketing for about 25 years, and I'm very passionate about the development of sales dev reps and inside sellers and account execs. Something personal about me on the side, I do marketing for my son's band. I'm the band manager for a little local band here in Austin that plays around. And so on the weekends, I'm promoting and booking gigs at bars. So I'm always in marketing. And even on the weekends, I'm in marketing.
I love it. Well, maybe we can use you to get some entertainment for the next summit, or maybe next time we're in Austin.
Absolutely. They work for tips.
I love that. That's what we like. That's what we like. And then finally, Junan, thank you again for joining us here.
Hey, everybody. Thank you for having me. My name is Junan Pang. I lead Slack's customer success team for our AMER West region. I've been there for about 2.5 years, and prior to that, ran Optimizely's North America CSM team. I'm super passionate about this topic. This is when I look back on my career, a lot of the success that I've been able to experience and have been able to witness, I think comes down to how well do teams cross-functionally partner. And so I know today we're talking about sales and marketing and success, but I think, this idea kind of expands to basically every single team within a company, like sales engineering, legal, product engineering. So super pumped for the conversation today. Thanks for having me.
We are super excited to have all of these panelists. And as you've heard, we've got kind of unique perspectives here. So let's take advantage of this time while we've got them. And please do bring any questions you have into the Q&A panel. But with that, let's jump into it a little bit. We've got 3 different perspectives here, and we're talking about alignment for SMORE revenue. But Bill, let's start with you. What does alignment actually look like between marketing, sales, and customer success? What does that mean to you, and what does that look like, or how have you seen that play out?
Yeah, selling is absolutely a team sport. I live by that mantra. And what that means is, if I'm an SDR, I need to know what demand gen's doing. The playbook is shared. So if demand gen is using whatever they're using to attract and educate, I have to know that. And they have to know the messaging that if I'm doing outreach and follow up, we're in total lockstep. And so when that gets handed off to the AE, I've collected the appropriate notes as part of that journey. And then when an AE sells it, customer support and success understands absolutely and fully what was sold. Total team sport, shared playbook.
Oh, that's great. And I know that it's always a great experience for the customer when they get to go through 5 different discovery processes as they're going from SDR to AE to sales engineer to customer success. And given the 3 perspectives, I should say, we have here, Junan, what's that look like from your perspective? Kind of, sometimes we hear, it's customer success's problem. I'm going to throw it over the fence, and I'm glad I don't have to deal with that. What does alignment look like from your perspective?
Yeah, I think, intentionally, marketing, sales, and customer success, they all, each team has a different objective and a different goal. And ideally, they should all kind of connect together. And so for me, alignment, what that means is understanding the other team's goals. What are those 3-letter acronyms that they are trying to drive, whether it's an MQL or an SAL or whatever it might be, or ACV or GRR. So understanding kind of what are the different kind of metrics that each team is driving towards, and then also understanding that it doesn't stop with the metric that you are driving towards, and because it's a circular motion because a successful customer will eventually drive more revenue, more opportunities, more advocacy for marketing. But I do think it starts with understanding the goals that each team has, and then making sure there's alignment there.
I think that's a great point. And I want to double click into that a little bit, because you've heard in the, maybe circa late 2010s, right? Oh, Slack doesn't have salespeople. And that's kind of complete. We know that's complete nonsense. But how does that kind of evolve as an organization grows? And I know you got to see it from that unique perspective at Slack. Has it always been like that, or have you kind of evolved into that level of alignment?
It's interesting. So we started back in the day with one one team kind of on the accounts team. It was called the accounts team. And so they weren't just AEs, they weren't customer success. They kind of handled everything, and everything fell under the same umbrella. But I think because of that origin of like, everybody had the mindset that like you were selling it as well as you were also successing. As the teams started to specialize, people had an understanding and an appreciation for what these other groups did and understood kind of how they all fit together. So I actually do think like, I mean, yes, like we do have sellers, we do have CSMs, we are hiring tons of them, just a quick plug, but it's all about like, I mean, it doesn't matter where it starts, it matters like the understanding and kind of across the teams, kind of going back to that point.
I love that. It's good perspective too. When you have somebody that's first kind of seen that, it's a great way. But Sheryl, and enablement plays an important role of this, because you know, it's not just about hiring people that can do the job well, it's also about training them to work together effectively.
Yeah, and putting a pitch out there, enablement is not even just about training. Enablement is about human performance. We are human performance engineers, and that means a lot of different things. But on the alignment side, just so everybody knows, like our group is not sales enablement. We're really go-to-market enablement, and we do serve as a lot of connective tissue between a lot of different teams. But in the end, what I found is the key to alignment across every function is a complete focus on the customer as like your son that you all revolve around, and specifically the customer experience, which comes into play all along the way. Like what shows up on your website and how you talk about your value should also show up in your marketing campaigns, in the conversations that like Bill's team has right out the gate. I mean, really, the sales development team is probably the first set of people that any customer speaks with. So the experience in doing that propagates the entire selling motion that follows. So everything that happens at the beginning of whatever motion you have on the marketing side should follow with every single sales conversation. Your customer is the focus. What value can we bring to the customer? And every single person the customer ever talks to focuses around that value, communicating the value, talking through value. When you get to Junan's customer success side, bringing forward the value and showing the customer, look, we really did what we promised at the beginning. So that entire alignment is all about the customer in the middle and having value props that show up all along the way in a very consistent manner. We sing from the same songbook, and the customer feels like they're working with one company and that we're all focused around them.
Yeah, and you know, just to add one more point to that, meeting the customer where they are, when you look at it as I'm going to serve up the right message at the right time. We look at it as at the interest phase, they're getting this type of message. At the awareness phase, this type of message. At the discovery phase, this type of message. So I think that enhances the customer journey, is meeting them where they are. And that's how we, that's how we train our SDRs, is to meet them exactly where they are.
And if everybody can get out of the narrow boundaries where like we get paid, like in the end, what we want to focus on is make the customer happy, and then it's the gift that keeps on giving, right? Which I know we're going to talk about later, but we're all sellers, we're all involved in customer success. We all care about net retention, growth, all of it.
I think that's important, and I appreciate you all setting that context. And I think one of the analogies that we've heard before is renewal is a review of the report card, but grading starts the first time I talk to somebody at the company, not when the contract's signed, not when I get into the sales process, not when I'm done with the stage of the funnel, but literally from that build, to your point, from that first touch at interest, like how and what are they talking about? And for those that want to go kind of deeper into that, meeting the customer where they are, Todd Capone's keynote yesterday does a great job of explaining how to be really flawsome, is Todd's word, about who you are and who you're not, to set appropriate customer expectations. So there's really no surprises at each one of those stages. one of the things that we've all hit on as we're talking about this, we've all talked about a few different roles that are involved. Oh, it's SDRs or AEs or the accounts team. We know that handoff process create a ton of friction oftentimes for customers. The joke of like literally I'm on 5 discovery calls by the time I talk to somebody on Junan's team. That's not a great experience for the customer. What are some tactical tips that you've seen to improve or reduce some of that friction in handoff processes? And Sheryl, let's start with you on this, because I think you've got that unique revenue enablement perspective on it.
Yeah, this is close to my heart, because I think you have to make it really easy for people. And my definition of making it easy is that I can go back to, we're all just focused on the customer and we do what's right. But in the end, I'm all about setting expectations about how you expect people to communicate together, work together. Like, what are our core teaming principles? So when I'm in sales, I sell a deal, I close a deal, I'm going to celebrate because I'm getting paid. But your job is not over. Like, part of your job as a salesperson is to make sure that there is a warm handoff to customer success. Work with customer success, help them understand who the players are in the account. I'm also a big proponent, by the way, of bringing in your key customer success people before the deal ever closes, and start the customer down that path before the agreement is even signed. Start them thinking about the deployment process, the configuration, like what the project looks like to go live. And when you think about a handoff as just another part of the customer journey, and we're going to make sure the customer feels shepherded through, that's the key. But we have to teach people what that really looks like. So, if you're an account manager, I do expect you to have like at least monthly meetings, for example, with your customer success person and talk through things. And if you're closing deals, make sure that you do have a meeting set up to kick off the relationship, do a warm handoff. If you're working with your business development representative on strategic deals, like, you should meet with your business development representative once a week. But if we don't prescribe what we expect in terms of rhythm of business and communication, you can't leave that open. You should really have some set teaming principles and communication benchmarks that help people rev up the rhythm and start talking to each other when they first come on board. And then the habit stays.
And I would say just quickly, the way that we enable SDRs so that the handoff is frictionless, an SDR sees their territory and their integration with their AE as an entrepreneur sees a business. And when they own it and they have unity, they care about everything, including the handoff with all of the detailed notes to the AE, so that we don't lose any fidelity. But rather than teaching an SDR that they're a resource to their account executive, teach them that they're a partner in the business. And they own it.
Yes. And they should be treated as such, Bill. It's
right.
Really team selling. I'm all in with you on that.
Yeah.
We all work together, team selling, team on customer success. Like, we work as a team, and then the alignment happens because that's the way you see it.
I love that point. Like, the point around expectations and like, this is how it should be. Like, I think if you start with the mindset and kind of start there in the sense that, everybody understands that we're all on the same team. And, if one link in that team fails, like, we all fail. If that customer doesn't achieve the outcome they're looking for, then we all fail. And so I think, like, when you ask about tactics, Richard, like, there are a lot of different hows, right? Like, you can do it in a Google Doc, you can do it in Salesforce, you can do it we do it in Slack, but it all comes back to the mindset. And as long as people understand kind of what the outcome that we're all driving towards is, which is not just, that team hitting their individual goal, but the customer hitting their goal, that's how we can all be successful.
I think there's a whole lot to that. And one of the conversations that we've had actually recently was about the idea of revenue pods. And I think this is maybe in certain segments, Proposify, for example, they're very high volume inbound business, and they have different pods depending on your requirements and all of that, where it's literally almost like what Junan, what you were talking about with your account team, where there was an AE, an SDR, a technical resource, and like a support person, and they've got a pod. And Bill, here's your territory. You're the franchise for this territory. What do you need? And it facilitates, Sheryl, back to what you were saying, it creates like this seamless communication, because you don't have AE over here and marketing over there and support over there. You've got this group working together to sort of take over, for lack of a better word, a territory or a vertical or whatever it might be. Whole bunch of questions hopping in here. I love it, folks. Give me just 2 seconds to digest these. Yes, very good. Sheryl, so you're chatting a little bit about team selling before. Matthew's got a question here, and Sheryl, we'll start with you with this one, but Junan and Bill, I'd love your perspective as well. How do you think about compensation in a team selling world?
So this is funny, because I was just starting to type something, because this is something we deal with every year. And our company, just to give you a heads up, like InfoBlox is evolving from kind of a traditional selling model where you had perpetual licensing. We've evolved over the last few years into subscription and SaaS. So the comp plan evolves as the business evolves. And what I will say is everybody does have different components in their comp plans. But in the end, the way we structure the comp plans is that everybody wins when we align and work together and bring the customer down the path, like down that happy path of I'm pitching value. I continue to prove that value as I go through the selling motion. And then when I get to customer success, we show them that, we really do provide that value. And then it's all about, you never stop selling. Like in subscription and SaaS, everybody is selling all the time, from support to customer success to our business development team. And when we all focus on the customer and focus on continuing the selling motion, yeah, you hit your comp numbers and the whole pie grows when we do that. So everybody ends up winning, but comp plans do differ based on what your role is in that chain of events, for sure. But we all care about net retention. What I will say is the big metric that everybody cares about and is tied to is net retention.
One maybe just to chime in here, I think like everybody has their own primary metric, and so I agree with Sheryl in that like the higher goal is like can we get towards increasing net retention, but every role has a primary kind of purpose and a primary goal that they are best suited towards driving. And so like I personally don't believe in comping, for example, customer success on like deals that close. Because like what you don't want is it's kind of like little kid soccer. You don't want everybody running to the ball, like wherever the ball is going. You want people kind of running out ahead. You want people to pass to, things like that. And so you need to set up the comp structure in a way that facilitates that passing. So that way, like, a midfielder can get it to the offense, because the offense person is the best person at, scoring that goal.
Yeah. And for SDRs, I mean, obviously you're looking to incentivize a behavior, and we're trying to find pipeline. What's the ultimate goal for an SDR? We're trying to find pipeline. Right. And so in order to get, and not just pipeline, but quality pipeline that converts to bookings. So there, I've seen a number of different models, including all the way back to meetings, paying somebody to get meetings, but ultimately we have to find those sales accepted opportunities that have the propensity to go to close. And so to me, that's incentivizing the right behavior. There's other KPIs that we're going to measure, but what's the most important thing to pay on? And so that's, again, it's one version, but I feel like in our world of sales development, we're looking for that quality pipeline.
And I think part of it too, just to expand on Bill's point, is also like being really clear about what the goal of the role is, right? We know we want retained customers and we want them to be really happy and love us, but there's a lot of different parts to be played in there, and incentivizing the right behavior. And the other part I would say too, back to Bill's point, is, it's got to be something that they can at least influence or control in a lot of ways, right? Because that's where the motivation is. If my job is to pass the ball, And, I'm a coach on the sidelines. I can't pass the ball. That's so far out of my control. One other part, and David Ashworth asked a very interesting question here, sort of reducing upfront sales commissions, deferring that to a year to annuity. An observation I've seen from some product-led companies is that there is no annual contract anymore. There are certain organizations, and there's a few very large organizations that are big unicorns that don't do annual contracts. They will charge you more if you want an annual contract. That's how committed they are to this customer journey. Klaviyo is a customer, an organization in Boston that's actually so committed to this that they'll charge you more if you want to do an annual contract because they believe in the customer journey so much. It also puts that pressure on them where we have to win you back, not every year, but literally every single month, we need to add a ton of value to your life. So it's a pretty far out there. I don't know if that's for everybody, but David, I've seen organizations take it that far on the commissions and rewards front. Great conversation. Keep these coming. You've heard Sheryl, Bill, and Junan super knowledgeable about this and can take it in a bunch of different directions. I want to dive in a little bit deeper to that last piece, right? If we just think about things as a funnel, it's done. I hand it off to Junan's team, and then I move on to the next thing. We're talking about a more sophisticated way to do things here, where I'm invested in Junan getting great customers and Junan's team turning them into advocates. But as Sheryl said, that starts almost right away from the conversation with Bill and team. Junan, I want to start with you on this. As we think about creating advocates, not just customers, but really turning them into advocates, what are some things that you've seen organizations do to really go from just being, I'm a customer, I'm happy, to like, no, like this, I can't live without this?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things I think about with that. I mean, I think the first one is it's personal. And so if you can help your customer, behind them, when we say customer, like there are people behind that, there's a person behind that. And so if you can help them grow in their careers and achieve their goals and hit their their business targets, like I think that goes a very long way. Something that's a little bit more tactical that I've done, and seen across my career is this idea of certification, and that kind of brings it back to the personal side. And so prior company, we actually also have a certification program at Slack, but my prior company at Optimize, we built out a pretty robust certification program for all of the key personas. And what that started to do was over time, as SDRs would have conversations with prospects, you would actually do research on the company, and actually you would see job postings where they actually had Optimizely certification as a requirement there, and that starts to kind of build this idea that like people are committed to your product and your company, not just like the time that they're at this company, but beyond that, and they bring kind of you along with them throughout that journey. And they're more than just like, yeah, we use your product and we like it, but they're actually going to kind of carry you forward in their own personal careers.
And with that, I want to just double click into that to make sure everybody's clear, right? When you say certification, what did that mean at Optimizely? What was I getting certified in?
Yeah, and so I'll just take one example. We had a developer persona, and so there was a program, a training you would take this test, it would certify you, you would get this badge, you put it on LinkedIn, and so it was actually something you would put on your resume, but it was also something that companies would look at to say, hey, I'm looking for a certified developer to build Optimizely experiments. And so it allowed you to kind of show that you were maybe like accredited through Optimizely, that you had the skills to be successful using this product. And that became, another kind of career development or professional development skill for themselves.
It's very, very interesting concept. And I think it's something where you see a lot of traction. And we'll talk a little bit more about user lifetime value versus customer in a bit. But Junan, thank you for sharing that. Sheryl, I know education plays an important role in kind of going from that, hey, I'm using it, to hey, I'm a huge advocate of it. But what are some things that you've seen organizations do that are kind of great?
So customer advocacy this is interesting. So the first thing I will say is everybody is ultimately responsible for customer advocacy, but I do think you have to have some sort of formalized role around that. You have to have a person that creates and leverages programs and goes and executes on making customer advocacy tangible. Like you have to have some sort of a customer reference and referral program, for example. You have to have somebody that's searching for the success stories that you can bring public, and the people that'll speak with you at events, and people that are going to stand up for you when you're applying to the Gartner Magic Quadrant or whatever it is. So you do need a person that's kind of accountable for a real customer advocacy program. But the organization as a whole, you all are focused on customer satisfaction, customer retention, customer growth. You're satisfied in bringing value to customers, but to bring an advocate, you have to actually generate excitement and passion in individuals to get to the advocacy level. So the way we speak with and work with customers day to day, how quickly we bring them to a level where they can't imagine life without your value and your services, that's what you want to get to. And that's where like support plays a huge role. Like everybody knows that there's going to be a problem somewhere along the way. The way support works with the customer and the intense focus on helping people overcome those hurdles, that matters as much as anything in generating advocacy. So I don't want to forget about support, like customer success, yes. Our selling motion, yes, but support is huge. I just want to call that out. But advocacy is a customer that wants to take you with them wherever they go. And on the other side of things, I mean, I will tell you, there are vendors that I don't want to work with anywhere I go. So be careful, because you don't ever want to end up in that bucket. But memories live long when you have a bad experience working with a customer and with a company, and that can happen too. So I'm always wary of that, but advocacy, yes, people will take you with them when you show them that you are helping them grow their own career.
Yeah, I completely agree. And then they become a thought leader, and then it helps their brand, and then they go and speak on behalf of you. From our perspective, from the SDR's perspective, you know, early in the journey, we want to arm them to make them be heroes inside their company. That's it, before they even become the advocate. We have to give them the tools that they need to go and help sell the deal. And we talk about things like, this is how you get your promotion. This is how you become the company hero that saves lots of money, right? So from all the way from that to them becoming thought leaders and speaking on your behalf, it all matters. So just to underscore what they said, they hit all the points.
It's such an important narrative to be able to point to, though, right? Like, oh, hey, you know, when we worked with Sheryl, she was here, we solved this really awesome problem for her. And it's not just that she was doing really well, she got promoted for it, she's speaking on it because we really unlocked that unique value. Really, I love this live question that's coming in. Ashley Conway, this is a wonderful question for this panel. Thank you for asking. So Ashley's question is for environments where CSMs don't carry a quota. There's been some internal debate on when the right time is to bring in sales and what that handoff process looks like. Would love insight from the panel. Junan, if we didn't start with you in this question, I think we'd be doing everybody a disservice here. Junan, what recommendations can you give to Ashley here on this oftentimes really tricky and political landminey scenario?
I mean, this is an awesome question. And I hate to go back or sound like a broken record here, but I start with like the mindset in that, like, you know, we all win if we can help our customers grow in their adoption of the product, get more value, and ultimately, you know, they pay us more over time. And so if you have that kind of end goal in mind, I actually think it's okay for a CSM to bring, you know, if you identify that there is an opportunity for an upsell, I think it's totally fine to like talk to the sales team immediately. But I think what it is like between sales and customer success, you need to figure out like, what is the best approach to get to that end outcome? Because ultimately, like, you know, the best way to retain a customer is to grow them. And so if we think about that, like the AE and the CSM, they'll understand kind of how to navigate that customer relationship and figure out the right place for an AE to jump in, you know, if there's a opportunity for them to run with.
Sheryl, please.
So this is super interesting because there is a lot of debate in customer success as a whole around, what are they quoted? Are they not quoted? Do you have them do upsells, or do you have the account executive do upsells? It's an ongoing debate, and my thinking is either model can work. You always have some quoted people, some non-quoted people, but I actually really like the notion that customer success is entirely focused on, I'm just going to be the advocate for the customer. I care only about the customer. I don't have a number, because what happens there is you generate so much focus. You're not worried about selling them the next thing, but you become that trusted person where you're having ongoing like quarterly business reviews. How are we doing? What are done well, do better? And what are your plans? Like, I want to start thinking about how I can help you with all of your plans for the next fiscal year or two. So let's talk about where you're going next and think about, is there a way we can help you with that? I think customer success is as good as of a lead generation organization as anyone, because you have that inside track. They're going to tell your customer success person things they'll never tell a salesperson, because a salesperson is inherently compensated to sell you more. So customers are always going to hold back. With customer success, if they're not quoted, then you have an open door, and you have the minds of people on the inside that can help you work your way to the next deal. Getting that inside information is the hardest part of selling, because you have to know who to ask the right questions to. You're blind to people in the background that might be influencers. Customer success has all of that. So truthfully, I'm a big fan of not quoting customer success, so that you have a team that can get you the inside info that your sales team will likely never have access to. And that's just my own personal opinion, by the way. I don't speak for anybody else other than my own personal opinion. So I'm just going to call that out.
No, I think it's interesting. And Bill, I'd love your perspective on it too, because you sit kind of way at the top of some of this, but you probably sometimes get to see the border war happen between, and I think we've all at least heard of that or no one here has that problem, of course.
Well, and so there are some account executives that they are pseudo CSMs and they stay close at all times. So they know what's going on in a minute, but untethering a CSM from a quota makes them focus on all the things instead of one thing. Again, the money drives the behavior. The incentive points the brain in the direction that it wants to go. So if all I'm ever doing is looking for upsell opportunities, I might miss other things. If you take care of all the things, you're taking care of the customer, and then organically they choose to expand because they feel that love, right? They feel the love and support. But I think untethering puts them in a position to do all the right things at the right time.
And I think this is something too, where and Junan and Sheryl and Bill have all talked about this, but it really comes back to like how you think about what your organization presents out to your prospects and your customers. And that pulls into who you hire, right? There are sales guys and sales gals that we've worked with that are pseudo CSMs. There are sales guys and sales gals that we've worked with who are like, my goodness, I feel like I just got sold a used car. I'm not sure what happened, but like I need to go take a shower after that. And that starts with what your org needs to look like. And that's going to be different by business. And then that influences who you hire and how you start to align them. The one piece of advice I would give to Ashley here that's been hit on, and I want to just echo this, is regardless of what method you choose of when, do we hand off to AEs, do we quota CSMs, for a handoff process like that, think about what that experience is from the customer first. Put this SOP in place between, or the operating procedure in place between CS and AE to make sure that that's aligned. So that way your customer has a friction-free experience. Because if they raise their hand, and then it's like Sheryl was saying, if I raise my hand and say, hey, I want to buy more, and then somehow because your organizational dysfunction, that becomes difficult, like I probably don't want to buy from you. Like, why'd you make that? I'm trying to give you money. Don't make that hard. And so it's just something to keep in mind with that here. Bunch of questions in the chat panel, bunch of questions popping up here. I love it, folks. Let's see here. Ooh, Ooh, I like this. Let's actually double click into this one. So let's take David Fox's question. I want to do this as a lightning round because we've got 3 different rules here. So I'll give everybody on the panel a second as they read this. So David Fox's question is more on compensation, outcomes, motivation. Bill, you've said this a few times, right? You're gonna drive the right outcomes with compensation as as a lever here. But Bill, let's start with you. I think maybe you've got maybe the easiest answer to this. But how do you really use comp to drive the appropriate outcomes?
Yeah, so we have a blended model, for example. So you have your base comp, and then what you want to create that upside, that what we've always known in sales is to create a different sort of lifestyle for someone, right? It gets them to a different echelon. But in order to do that, in order to make that something that they will chase, the goal has to be attainable. There has to be a stretch to it. It has to be attainable. If they never attain it, they never get their upside comp, then they get frustrated in the role and they leave. So we want to take what is the need of the business, which is pipeline, create a goal that aligns to that, stretch it just a little bit, right? So that we get a little bit more. It's got to also be aligned to the needs of the account executive, right? So that has to equate to a 4 or 5x pipeline for the AE to hit their bookings target. So they all have to be aligned so that ultimately we're driving the right behavior. But the incentive is, I want quality pipeline, I have to pay that upside incentive to go chase that pipeline.
I think that great context there. Sheryl, I'd love your perspective too, because you get to see kind of a cross revenue.
Yeah, so I'm going to take this to a higher level. Like if I think about fiscal year planning, I'm going to take it from planning. So every year we go through this fiscal year planning, and as part of that planning, we say, what are the growth numbers that we need to hit in like sales, for example? So what are our targets for net retention, for percent renewals, for growth, and how do we get to these top level numbers? So as you sort out how you're going to pull levers, like what you're going to sell, how you're going to do retention, like how do you get to the numbers that are the goals of the organization? And then you have to think about what are the key, like, what is the 80%? Like, what do I need my account executives to focus on? What do I need my customer success people to focus on? What do I need marketing to focus on? What do I need my sales development team to focus on? Like the key focus areas that will ensure that you get the leads, the pipeline, and the closed deals and the retention and growth numbers. When you've laid out how you're getting there, that dictates, I think, your compensation plan. You cannot cover 100% of the things you need to do with a compensation plan. That I'm convinced of. So you kind of have to hone it in on what do you have to have the team focus on. And sometimes you have to have some percentage tied to like a new thing that you want them to sell that they're not comfortable with, they're not used to. But for the sake of the business, you need to see, you need a certain amount of that thing sold. So if you have to have something, you make that part of the comp plan, but you have to narrow it down. I think one of the things I've learned over time is if you have more than 2 things in a comp plan, you hose yourself up. You don't want that. You can incent like the manager layer on some additional things, but the individual layer, you have to hone it down to the absolutely critical things you need their focused attention on to ensure success and getting to those top level metrics.
I love that point, Sheryl. This idea of focus, and I think that it's an awesome point that like there is no way you're going to comp your way. You can't comp every single like step of the process, but if you can figure out those kind of key milestones, because I think at the end of the day, every single team's comp or those metrics that they're driving towards, it actually becomes a leading indicator for the next team that's kind of in that circular motion. And so like, a lot of people maybe think that like customer success is kind of the end of the line and that like once you get the renewal, but I think Richard, what you said earlier, which is like, that's a review and then it kind of starts all over again, right? And so how do you chain together all of these kind of compensation metrics so that they fit together and are focused on the right, like the primary thing you want that team to focus on?
And there's a lot in compensation, especially as you start to get in. There's some questions about professional services, and there's some questions about add-on products. Like there's a lot, and that's actually why we've got a session this afternoon focused exclusively on compensation, because it's at least an hour-long conversation. I want to keep us on this CSAE alignment topic because we've got some good conversations going here. And Victor Kim asked the question, and I think it's on a couple folks' minds. What are the pros and cons of having maybe CS handle renewals versus AEs handling renewals? And I love this question because, again, I think the short answer is it depends on a lot of factors. So I think the team can talk probably in good first principles, but it's going to be a little bit different business by business. And Junan, let's start with you on this one, just having seen it from a few different angles.
Yeah, this question is great. I feel like we could spend 45 to an hour on this question alone.
Yeah.
I will say, philosophically, I think you have to focus on like, what are the skill sets that are required to drive kind of the outcome that you need? And typically, when I think about somebody in customer success, they are really good at, delivering value, driving maturity, driving adoption, and taking care of the customer to make sure that like they achieve their outcomes from a business perspective. What they are less good at versus an AE, or maybe we have renewal managers, is negotiating, chasing down procurement, things like that. And that to me is not the best use of a CSM skill set. And at the same time, you could also argue that the best skill set of an AE is the ability to identify, revenue, new business, and go and close that. And so when I think about renewals, I actually think it's not CSMs, it's not AEs, it's actually this, account manager, renewal manager type focus that has a very, very particular skill set on, working with procurement.
I think with this too, one thing to keep in mind as you're thinking about your organization, it's tough to put the genie back in the bottle with some of these things. So if you go down a path here, make sure you're clear and communicative with your team about why and how. I've seen it happen in organizations where as soon as Junan creates the renewal opportunity, the CRO is at his desk. That's too small. You don't know how to close. And there's silliness that can happen like that. So back to Junan's point, really think about those strengths and weaknesses and how you communicate. Sorry, Bill, I saw you were about to go, but I wanted to make sure we got that point in too.
No, I agree with Junan. I mean, it's a certain skill set. It's a huge time involvement, and that could potentially distract from a CSM because you have to work with legal, and you have to work with procurement, and you have to have a sense for a selling motion. So it's everywhere I've been. It's been its own motion. It's been its own role. It's been renewal manager, or it's part of the account management function, but it is separate.
And again, back to the who and how you hire, what skill set you're looking for. I mean, there's a lot of MBA level organizational design here as well.
Yeah, and a lot of different things can work. That's all I'll say. As long as you have all the roles and responsibilities defined and you have a clear visual of the role everybody plays along this endless customer journey and customer cycle, as long as you have that laid out, you're good. You can make different functions can live in different places as long as everybody understands the role they play and is incented appropriately.
It's funny how that works. We'll talk about organizational design, and then we've got a session on compensation to incentivize people correctly. Great other question coming in here. We've been talking about the flywheel quite a bit in terms of what do we see from a customer perspective, but one of the things that's equally important about that is making sure what's working, further down in the flywheel is making its way back up to the folks that are on the front lines talking to customers and prospects. Bill, from your perspective, what have you seen in terms of things that help you programmatically scale what your team is doing, right? So something's really successful down in the weeds on Junan's team. down. Sorry, Junan, you're just running customer success at our fake company. I don't know if that was obvious. Something's really successful down in the post-sale side. How is that bubbling back up to you and then kind of being scaled out into the meeting setter organization?
So for those of us that are looking for meetings, I think what drives high success in meetings is one, before we even make the call to get the meeting, is understanding conversion. If you teach an SDR how much activity leads to a meeting, they'll do the right activities, calls, emails, social connects to get there. And so I think for us to try to drive meetings, it's a KPI, but what helps us get there is just not trying to be an expert on the product, but just being a fantastic listener and someone that asks broad questions. And then knowing your role and saying, I've heard enough from this conversation that I think it makes sense to have a meeting and dive deep. But also in that, if you think it makes sense. So there are certain tactics that we use to where we are almost like a tour guide versus the expert. I'm going to tour you around the facility and you will meet the appropriate resources that can talk the talk. We train our SDRs on all the gears and the wires and everything. But the thing that we really try to drive home to get that meeting is, I'm going to introduce you to the appropriate resources versus trying to say things that maybe I would step on somebody's toes, or I would short sell, meaning I'm going to let somebody go deep on that conversation versus me saying short selling and going, whoops, I should have talked about this versus that. I just listen, uncover that pain, make the pain hurt, and then tee up that next call. That's how we scale meetings. And that's what we do all day, every day.
You're taking them down the pain funnel there, Bill. I
That's
know
right.
what that sales
That's right.
methodology is.
That funnel is not dead though. The pain funnel is alive and well.
No,
We don't want that to be a flywheel though, right? We want the pain to stop.
That's right. That's right.
I have a question for you, Bill. This is interesting, like how you qualify before setting up that meeting and what that line is. Like, how do you play that game? Because for many businesses, it's not all about the sheer number of meetings. Like,
no.
Bill, my account managers, like, they want some qualification that it's going to produce and bear some fruit. Like, it's going to actually be a good opportunity before they meet with the customer. There are different lines and different levels at every org, but is it all about getting the meeting, or is it as much about qualification before you drive that meeting?
We are. We have a methodology that we use, and we're looking for very specific data points so that I don't randomize the time of an AE and an SA, right? I want to have these data points to say, I think we've got something here. They've got a funded project. They've got active pain. I've got someone that may not be a decision maker, but they've got access to a decision maker. And it's clearly that they're an influencer. So there's certain data points that we're looking for before we're comfortable engaging, these highly sought after internal resources, right? And they'll, if something's missing, they'll sniff it out, right? An AE will be like, you need to go get one more data point or two more data points. But the intention, we've given them the guide of things to ask for to say, yep, that meeting, that's a meeting worth our time, and it's going to get some velocity, right?
That's great.
Yeah,
great
agree.
discourse. I love it, and I think that's probably another session that we could spend a whole bunch of time talking about, right? How do we figure out who we should be talking to? Who's the right ideal customer file? How do we structure time? We've got a couple minutes left before we go to key takeaways. I want to hit on one last topic that we've touched on in prep, and we've kind of danced around here, is this idea of like second order revenue, right? And just to set context on this, second order revenue is when I've sold to Sheryl. Sheryl goes and works somewhere else, and Cheryl's taken my business with her. We'll just do this kind of quick lightning round, and Sheryl, we'll start with you on this. Just things that you've seen organizations do that are like pretty clever or smart around keeping and kind of exciting second order revenue and getting that going.
So there are two types of second order revenue, right? There's, I buy a little bit to try something out, and then what you want is to grow big in that account. That I consider second order revenue. And then there's somebody goes to another organization and you want them to be a champion for you in that new prospect and bring in. In either case, I'm going to bring up an entirely new topic that has a lot of traction in creating second order revenue, and that is training. Like making sure your customers are comfortable and competent and feel like they can utilize, administer, and manage whatever you've just sold them, in addition to bringing like all the business value stuff that you sold to begin with. Who takes training and selling those training services, I've seen orders of magnitude of difference in how that customer grows versus a customer that does not engage in training. And that comfort level with your technology, it's a 9x figure. Like I don't have the overall industry data, but I've been with a couple of companies and we see a 9x increase in how much more the customer buys, or that person or those people who have been trained by, because then they're comfortable and they know what you can do and they know how to use it and manage it. And that comfort level with training is what I would say brings a lot of second order revenue, in addition to all the customer satisfaction stuff and value we already talked about. So focus on bringing training forward, and that will help you.
And I think that I talked earlier about certification. I think training, certification kind of go hand in hand in this, developing skill sets at your customer. Maybe one thing I'll just kind of add here is just at the end of the day, they have to love, like your customers have to love working with your product because, it delivers value. It helps them do their job. They don't wake up they don't wake up in the morning and think, oh, I want to go and, use this product. What they're thinking is I need to go and get my job done. And so if your product helps them do that in a, pleasant and kind of fun way, then like they're going to love the product. And then the second side is they have to love working with you. And those two things are absolutely critical into, whether or not you get second order revenue.
Yeah, I agree. Completely agree. I mean, we're open source, so you get a lot of people touching your product, and then you get a lot of advocates, and right, so they go out and extol the virtues. They sort of become, agnostic in the beginning, and then it's like, I'll take this everywhere I go because I can't do my job without it. Regardless of the company, I love this product so much, it's going to go with me wherever I go, and that's all I'm going to do. I'm going to make my employees sick because I talk about it all the time, especially if we don't have it already, and I will talk it to death, and then we will buy it.
How did we live without this thing? I think that's like the holy grail of the second order revenue. We're at time. That went by much faster than I think any of us anticipated. Before we wrap up here, I would like to just get key takeaways from each one of our panels. We covered a whole heck of a lot of ground here today on alignment. We talked compensation, handoff processes, and just about everything in between. Sheryl, let's just start with you on this. What's one key takeaway that you want to leave our audience with here today?
I think the key takeaway I want to leave behind is this whole alignment, customer experience, customer journey. Like you have to have a center point around which everybody revolves, and you have to define that center point. So when I say the words customer journey, I mean, you have actually defined stages of the customer journey, including the circular, we work with them, they grow, they renew, like define it and define what each role does in each segment of the customer journey. Have that definition, have the roles focused around the customer, and have like a clear set of expectations for each of those roles. And then you bring it up a level and say, in the end, we all care about the ultimate success of our company, and our pie just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and then everybody wins. So yeah, you have your compensation. Everybody wins and everybody makes more money when our company thrives. And that's kind of the growth of the pie that's outside of whatever compensation plan you have for people. But aligned customer journey, specific definitions. That's my key takeaway.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Sheryl. Bill?
A customer journey needs to not only educate and demonstrate value, but it needs to surprise and delight. You want your customers to say, wow, I totally didn't expect that. What a great experience. And then the selling motion becomes one of affirmation. So that's what I'll leave you with.
Great. And then last, but certainly not least, Junan.
I'm going to repackage a little bit of what Sheryl said, but like we are all on the same team. Like there is one team, and if that team can deliver value to our customers in a way that creates a great experience, then our pie gets bigger, everybody wins, and that's actually how we're all successful.
Panelists, Sheryl, Bill, Junan, I know y'all are super busy. I really like, this was a great conversation. I think we could have talked for another 3 hours about all of these different topics. Thank you so much for taking some time today to share your experience and expertise with us. Thank you so much for our sponsors and partners for making this happen. And then for folks that want a little bit more social lightweightness, we've got speed networking and some fun trivia coming up in just about an hour now. But Sheryl, Bill, Junan, again, on behalf of the team behind the scenes, all the folks in attendance here today and the whole MSP community, thank you so much. That was a ton of fun. Stay safe and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks.
Rich, thanks for the opportunity.